Are we good? All right. Good morning. It is day 4 and the final day of the inquiry into the right to food and child malnutrition. We will be going straight into the program for the day. We do apologize for a bit of a delay. For the members in the room, just to make note that the process is being live streamed. We are online, and I will be giving over to Commissioner Sibanyoni for the administration of the oath.
Thank you very much, Dr. Carter, Program Manager. Good morning, gentlemen. My name is J.B. Sibanyoni. I'm a commissioner from the South African Human Rights Commission. I'm going to administer the oath. But before doing that, I will have to just check whether or not you've got any objection towards taking the prescribed oath. If that is the case, we administer the affirmation. So, because some people have some objection taking the prescribed oath based on religious grounds. So may I just find out whether or not you've got any objection towards taking the prescribed oath. The proceedings are recorded, and then everyone will be required to speak through the microphone.
Thanks. Good morning, Commissioner and the team. We don't have an objection.
Okay. Then for record purpose, can you please state your full names?
My name is Fundile Gade, the MEC for Education in the Eastern Cape.
Thank you, MEC.
My name is Mahluban Lekwase, the Acting HOD of the Department of Education in the Eastern Cape.
Thank you very much. Let me start with the Honorable MEC. Do you swear that the information that you will present shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If that is the case, will you please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God"?
So help me God.
Thank you, MEC. And then maybe also the HOD, for record purpose, will you please state your full names?
I'm Mahluban Lekwase, Acting
Right.
HOD of the Department of Education.
Do you swear that the information that you will present shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If that is the case, then raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
Thank you very much. Then, Honorable MEC, the platform is yours. You can start making the presentation.
Thanks once more. Good morning to you, Commissioner, Commissioners. Good morning to the team and HOD and the entire staff. Commissioner, we would want to introduce the discussion and hand it over to the HOD for the entire presentation. But for me, I would want to welcome the significance of this discussion, because it's part of what we are mandated to do. As you would understand that food is not a privilege in the context of the policy evolution in education now. It's more of a right. So it becomes then critical to find ways of programmatically responding into what then could be a challenge moving forward in relation to the topic on the table. I wouldn't waste your time. I would request the HOD to just zoom into the presentation and then take a discussion further. Thanks, Commissioner.
Thanks, Commissioners, ladies and gentlemen, Honorable MEC. Let me put my spectacles. We have tried to follow the questions that were sent to us by the Commission. We are covering all the three areas: the state of the National School Nutrition Program, the budget over the period of 3 years, including the coverage, that is the access to learners, how many are accessing, and also the different types of programs that we are pursuing that are also funded through the conditional grant, and also covering other activities that are taking place other than the school nutrition program, as a way of encouraging schools to have food gardens and all that. So we're also covering briefly that area. We are going to follow the outline as indicated, covering the legislative framework, the business planning process guided by the Division of Revenue Act, and also the minimum requirements as well as the budget breakdown. Firstly, as a sector, we introduced a school nutrition program as a way of addressing the barriers to learning, because the issue of learners going to school hungry was seen as a barrier to learning, especially in rural schools as well as your township schools and your informal settlements. We have seen that is a major problem. That is a contributor towards the attainment of education by those learners, especially from the poor households. So we are delivering this nutritious food to quintile 1 to quintile 3 public schools, public ordinary schools. And that includes grade R, because grade R has been incorporated now into the mainstream primary schools. So we have also extended that conditional grant to cover learners that are in grade R. At some point, we used to exclude them. And it was looking very badly when those little ones were watching their elderly ones eating inside the primary school, and they were outside the primary school over the fence and coming from the same household that is very poor. So at some point, that was reviewed to include grade R. And it was also helped by the fact that grade R was included in the mainstream of the primary education system. We are also covering targeted special schools, because not all special schools are at the same level in terms of the poverty ratings and their location. We have also integrated other elements in this program, like your health promotion, your health lifestyles, your nutrition education, which also includes your deworming and the national school hygiene programs. And we are partnering with the Department of Health around this school health program. So we have a joint program on this one with the Department of Health. The issues of food security is also one of the things that we are also training food handlers on, as well as the issue of the school-based food gardens that we are also pursuing as additional programs into this one. We are also ensuring that we adhere to the contractual obligations around the people that we are using as food handlers, that were paying a stipend every month, because they are on a contract basis, more or less. So we're also paying their UIF to ensure that when they leave the system, at least they are able to get something from the UIF. So these are the things that we're also doing. Then this is how the program, you may say, is structured in terms of the planning. As I indicated earlier on, we're feeding primary schools, secondary schools in quintile 1 to 3, special schools, certain special schools, and we have also introduced breakfast sites. On the issue of the breakfast sites, in the office of the Premier, when we targeted one school at Duncan Village, one of the informal settlements here in East London, we discovered that in that school there are very poor learners coming from poor households. So as a staff of the Office of the Premier, we as part of the Mandela Month programs, we then bought your school uniforms and all that. But what we also picked up in that school is that educators decided to introduce breakfast, because there were certain number of learners that came to school without having food altogether. And they started to introduce this and took money from the National School Nutrition Program, even before it was formalized at a national level. So there were schools that were already using that creativity to address the problems of malnutrition and the lack of food at home in the households and all that. So they initiated that, but later on we then institutionalized the issue of breakfast. Although we have not rolled it out to all the schools, it's still targeted to certain areas. So you'll see in another slide where we are mapping out how we have increased the numbers over this period of 3 years. So it has not covered all the schools yet, but you can see that when we started, it was a small number, but we have since increased numbers, and also the projected numbers for 2023, 2024. There's a slide that talks to that. We're also paying stipends to the voluntary food handlers. So VFH is voluntary food handlers, and they are in the UAF. We also purchase utensils and equipment for each school, including although that one is not dealt with within the conditional grant, the issues of the kitchens. Proper kitchens are also being built, but as part of the infrastructure conditional grant, not within this conditional grant, the school nutrition. But in this one, we only buy utensils and equipment. We also employ 54 monitors to monitor what is happening in the schools and monitor the work of those 12,661 food handlers. And we also have data capturers, because we are expected to report in the sector, DPE, as well as the National Treasury, on the performance of this. So we need to have those data capturers to per district to collate all the information and ensure that we report. I've spoken to the deworming programs and nutrition education that we are pursuing, as well as the training of food handlers on meal planning, food and gas safety, and food hygiene. This is the breakdown of, now here we're talking about access. Who is accessing the school nutrition in the province, in the province? We said it's quintile 1 up to quintile 3 schools that are benefiting. The number of learners in terms of the primary schools as well as combined schools in the quintile 1 to quintile 3 that are fed over a period of 203 days per annum. We exclude holidays. So we're feeding 203 days. It's 1,137,167 learners from primary schools and combined schools. Then from high schools is 511,581. And then from special schools is 8,011, because special schools usually have fewer numbers than ordinary schools. The low enrollment schools, we have categorized them separately. Like, for instance, you're in the farm schools. We have 10,368 there. Then the primary schools that are participating in the program is 3,797. We have more primary schools than high schools in the province. Our high schools are less than 1,000 in all. So we have more primary schools. We have plus 5,000 schools in the province. But some of the primary schools are not in quintile 1 and quintile up to quintile 3. They are in quintile 4, others are in quintile 5. Hence, when you add 3,797 and you minus it from the 5,000, you will have something far more than 1,000. It's because other primary schools are in quintile 4, quintile 5, and they are not accommodated in this program. And then quintile secondary schools is 783 that are participating. We have about 906 or 900 and up to 900, between 906 and 930 high schools. But some of the high schools are in quintile 4 and quintile 5. Those that are in quintile 1 to quintile 3 is that 783 that we are targeting in this program. The special schools is 44. The low enrollment schools participating is 317. The workshops that we have held to train food handlers and all that is 12. These percentages that we have lifted here for primary schools as well as secondary schools are indicators that we have set for ourselves and targets that we have set for ourselves. In fact, they are referring to whether, according to the Division of Revenue Act and the conditions of the grant, we are meeting those conditions in terms of the times at which learners are supposed to be fed. We have a challenge there in terms of meeting those targets. Not that learners are not fed, or they are fed very late. I think there's something that does not take care of some of the conditions in schools, in the manner in which the DORA has been crafted and the conditions have been crafted. They are saying that your lunch must be served before 10. And surely if you are a school that is also serving breakfast, so you can't squash now the lunch and the breakfast within a very short. You need to give space so that also learners after lunch, which is about 11 o'clock, when we serve sometimes up to about 12 o'clock, they are still going to come back after break to school. So they must still be full at least up to the end of the end of the day. So there are those challenges that we are experiencing, where we are not meeting the set targets in the DORA in terms of times. Hence, Tina, we set our targets a bit lower than 100%. Otherwise, in terms of feeding, we are feeding 100% in the schools that we're targeting, and there's quality and all that. But this one is about the times, meeting the times that are set in the DORA. That's where we are just not meeting those targets. In terms of the allocation of the budget, we are allocated 1.4 billion. In fact, it's almost 1.5 billion. It's 1,492,183,000. That's the budget allocated for the Eastern Cape for the school nutrition program. For feeding of learners, we are allocating 1.447 billion, which is 97% of the whole budget. And then for kitchen equipment and utensils, we allocate 6 million to deal with that. And for nutrition education, it's 1.67 million. And for administration, it's 37 million, where we appoint your food handlers, your appointment of the stipend for the voluntary food handlers, as well as monitors, the 54 monitors. They are paid through that 37 million for administration of the grant and the implementation of the grant. So that's how we have broken it down in the province. And here we are breaking it down now in accordance with the years, as you requested, that let's break it down. But we have mapped it across the 4 years period. And you can see it was 1.367 billion in 2020, 2021. And it increased to 1.42, and it increased to 1.492. And next year, which is 2023-2024, is going to be increasing to 1.551 billion. Yeah, so that's how it is continuing to increase over the period. But we are in 2022-2023 financial year now. So these are the days at which we are feeding. We are feeding 199, and it continued like that. This year we're feeding 203. I think we're going back to 199 next year. It is projected like that. The number of learners that we are feeding, I think that row is very critical. That row. The total number of learners that are benefiting is almost 1667. That is 1,667,000. There's just 17 that is not supposed to be there. I think it's 1667,122. That's the number of learners that we have that we are feeding, and that number is almost 90% of the learners in the Eastern Cape, because I think we have 1.7, close to 1.8, 1.7 something million learners in the whole of the Eastern Cape, from primary to high school, including special schools. So which means in the Eastern Cape, we are covering almost 90% of the learners in terms of school nutrition to address the problem, malnutrition, as also the access to food. So that role is very, very important to show you how we are accessing. These are just the amounts per learner that we are spending. Special schools, secondary schools, you can see that secondary schools is higher because we are talking about older ones there. So in terms of food handlers, we used to give them 1.4, it increased to 1.6, it increased to 1,700. Currently it's 1,700 that we're giving them monthly as a stipend. And we take these people from their communities, from the communities where the school is. And also we are identifying parents to the learners that are in the schools, especially those that are coming from the poor households. So we identify them. So the benefit here is on learners, and also the benefit is on the overall household through the participation of the parent, especially from the poor households, also benefiting in this one. Breakfast budget. We have we are allocating about 53 cents for just to provide breakfast, your porridge and all that, so that abantwana, when they get in, at least they've got something to eat in the morning. When we started, and this is how we allocate to get the stipend for those that are cooking breakfast. It's just a small thing as compared to the one of the overall. And the number of learners that used to benefit when we started this was 9,691. But that number has increased to 178,358 in 2021-2022. We are now at 352, 783 thousand. That is now benefiting, and that number is going to grow to 471,617 next year. Because we have a number of these learners. When you move around the province very early in the morning, you will see learners walking long distances as early as 5:30. Others are going to catch scholar transport. Others are just walking because the schools are far. And there's no provision sometimes in some areas of the scholar transport. And surely a learner that has woken up at 4:30, ready to leave home after 5, that learner surely has not even eaten. And these are some of the conditions that are leading us to increase these numbers to cater for those kids that are coming from those households. These are vegetable gardens that we have tried to introduce. But they have got their own challenges. In certain areas, this is working. In certain areas, it's not working. We have encouraged schools to establish vegetable gardens, and some of the schools have indeed taken this up with a lot of enthusiasm and energy. Others are including this as part of the curriculum because some of them are doing agricultural sciences. So they do it as part of the curriculum. But the challenge that we usually have is the water scarcity, is the issue of the space, because some of the perimeter fence, the yard, is not enough for them to identify space for the food garden. But also the issue of vandalism. Some of the communities, schools, especially where they are closer to informal settlements and where they are closer to, they're in rural areas where there is no order in a rural area, they are always vandalized and people helping themselves on the vegetable gardens. But we are trying our level best to address the issue of fencing to ensure that schools are properly secured. So we are currently rolling out a program which is going to benefit between 190 and 200 schools in the current financial year. In fact, from now up to November, we've set that target for the implementing agent that is rolling out that fencing. This new fence that is tight, and we have seen it in areas where there is vandalism and crime, especially in Port Elizabeth, around Gqeberha, where in schools where we have already installed this new fence, we have seen the reduction of vandalism in those schools. So we have that program that we're embarking on big time to ensure that our schools are properly fenced, and it's going to help us to reduce level vandalism, especially in those schools that have got these initiatives. Here in Tanzania, I think there's an NGO that wanted to partner with us, and we signed that partnership because they wanted to work with communities and ensure that we utilize maximally the spaces that are in these schools that are underutilized for vegetable gardens and all that can help then the school in terms of the school nutrition program, but also help the communities as well. So there is that initiative, I think, around the schools in Tanzania. But these are some of the challenges that we are picking up. So as I was saying, some of the schools are successful, but some of the schools have given up. But some of the schools that are successful are those schools where the community also has got an interest in what is happening in that school, and they're able to protect whatever initiative. And Kwabona, they are also involved in that food garden. It's not only a school project, but also they are directly involved. And in those cases, we get a more successful initiative in such cases. So I just want to stop there, commissioners. That's what we have prepared as a way of our contribution as a department and as a sector in addressing malnutrition as well as to access to food. From our angle, I think as you had engagements with other departments as well, they've got their own angles in terms of contributing towards what you want to, you are currently inquiring about. Thanks, commissioners.
Thank you so much, HOD MEC. Commissioner Sibanyoni, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Carter. Let me start by appreciating the good stories that we hear from the Honorable MEC as well as the HOD, Mr. Kwase. You know what struck me the most is the provision of school breakfast, provision of the meals. And I see it as a change, because in the olden days, even children coming from rural areas, they would leave home without having anything to eat. And then until they leave school and they will only get the first meal when they arrive at home. And then I think it's something that needs to be applauded. I also want to applaud the information that schools are encouraged to establish food gardens. And then, in line with the last month, the July month, when we were saying we were following the message by our international icon, Nelson Mandela, to say, do what you can wherever you are with what you have. And I think it will go a long way. But I want to be spot on to say, we visited Nompumelelo informal settlement, and then we saw some children who, when you look at them, they are of school going age, but they were not at school, and it was during school hours. My question is, how is the Department of Education trying to maybe encourage parents, more especially from informal settlements, to send their children at school? And then also those who you will regard as grade Rs, we saw them playing around in those informal settlements. That's my first question. And then the second question that I want to ask, talking about food gardens and the like, next month it's September. 1st of September is tree planting day. And my question is, are people encouraged to plant trees? Not only food trees, but also indigenous trees, so that they should not regard trees as firewood. And then my last question, I think I will stop there for now. Well, I think there is a very important one which I also want to ask Mr. Kwase. I don't know whether I understand you very well when you said you've got more primary schools than high schools. So the question that comes to my mind is, what happens to the learners when they complete the classes at primary school? What happens to them if the primary schools are more than the high schools? Thank you very much.
No, no, thanks, commissioners. I was not sure whether there are other questions first, so that we respond. Let's take the set of the first ones. No, commissioners, let me start from below on the structure of the schooling system we have in the province. HOD is correct. We have got 5,023 schools, if I'm not mistaken. And out of that, plus minus 3,000 of them are the ones that end in grade 7. But if you go to the former Transkei area, you'll have a combination of the prototypes that are legislated in terms of the schooling system in the country. You'll have some of the grades within the primary schooling system, whilst they were supposed to be in the secondary system. That's why you'd have that bit of a challenge. In terms of the feeder schools, as Commissioner you are asking, to us is quite very systemic and good, because when they ascend into the FET band, they usually they are thinner in terms of the access to the FET band, and that gives a bit of hope and assurance that the schooling system is progressively moving well. Once you have got a bigger pyramid of schooling, of a school on top, for example, out of 500 learners you have in the school, let's say 300 of them are doing the GETC band, that is from grade 4 upward. So there is a bit of uncertainty once you have got a pyramid that is bigger on the top than on the bottom. So funeka ibe shaper in that fashion. So I'm saying, in that context, we are able to trace as they progress. We're able to trace as they progress from phase to phase, and outside of the basic education as well to the tertiary. So that structure is a bit gooder for us. The only thing that I can lift, Commissioner, which you have not asked, by the way, but I think it relates to what you are asking, is that in the province there are schools that have got overaged learners. Because remember, in basic education, the expectation is that they must have 18 years. But you'll find that there are schools that have got 20 and 21 still in basic education, but there are few. It's probably because of some of the social ills that you have raised. For example, just to elaborate on this question, HOT, the case of Boka, the one that has got a principal that raped a learner, which we dismissed and also is in the court of law now. One of the problems of that school is that there are so many learners that are overaged, to an extent of, in terms of age, closer to the teachers. They are of the same age. You'd have a teacher at 24 years there and a learner at 22 years. So, which is a bit of a problem, which we are busy managing. The second one, then I will give it to the HOD, the issue of the food security programs. We are one of the provinces that are providing innovations on this particular program. For the past 4 years, we have been securing in the competition of that Tiger Brands, yes, Tiger Brands. We have been the national champs in terms of the food security in schools. For example, one of the schools is the one in Stipends, just forgotten the name, for 2021. For 2020. For 2021 is the one in here in Potsdam. So there are pockets of excellence on this particular function, which from where we are seated, at least there is, in as much as we have not been able to maximize the potential of the Dr. Da partnership, because that's another thing that we have. We have partnered with Dr. Da in the context of ensuring that there is alleviation of poverty in communities, and also making schools as food hubs. Hence, we have introduced a directorate now in the department on rural development schools, so that you create a bit of divergency from the normal academic streams that you have, and become more technical and more vocational. And in that instance, create more agricultural technical schools, which are also giving a leeway to this concept that we're talking about. Thanks.
Thanks, MEC. Thanks, commissioners. I just want to start from the last question. I think this you are asking the correct question. We still have a challenge here, although it has not yet been able to overwhelm us. But it's a matter that the sector is grappling with the issue of addressing the repetition rate as well as the dropout rate in the whole system. Now, because of the repetition rate and the dropout rate, those learners that started at grade 1, maybe at having 200,000 learners in the province at grade 1, you find that at the end of the 12 years, when they register for grade 12 examination, it's only 100,000 that is there. And at some point, it was even less than 100,000. It was around 78,000. But when you look back, the 12 years backwards, when they started, there were 200,000. So which means we have lost almost 120,000 learners through repetition rate, through dropout rate. Others repeating the classes, others dropping out of the schooling system altogether, even at GET, that is at junior secondary or primary level, even without completing grade 9. Others dropping out immediately they get to high school, either grade 10. You find that you see the increase of the dropout rate, especially at high school level, as more challenges increase and as more learning areas tend to be introduced. You see that dropout rate is still a problem that the system needs to deal with. At some point, to respond to the dropout rate, we introduced new high schools because the learner classroom ratio in certain districts, especially in the area of Pondoland, Yombizana, Lusikisiki, Flagstaff, Port St. John's, Libode, those are highly densely populated areas. Their junior secondary schools, primary schools, have almost 1,000. Majority of them have got 1,000 upwards in terms of learners. And you could see that in that area, there was a high dropout rate immediately they finished junior secondary schools because of this problem, where high schools cannot cope with the numbers that are produced by junior secondaries. We then introduced new high schools. We converted some of the junior secondary schools to extend to comprehensive schools from grade R up to grade 12, so that to absorb those learners there, so that we don't have the high dropout rate. But that dropout rate is still a challenge that we need to work on. One of the issues that are contributing factors in this problem is at early childhood development, as well as the foundation phase or primary education. Our learners in the whole country, not even the Eastern Cape, according to these international studies, our learners in the country are not learning for those that are at grade 4. They are not learning for meaning. And our score as the whole country is less than 400 points. And that is the lowest category in terms of learning for meaning. And any score that is below 400, those learners are not learning for meaning. And majority of our learners are in that level. And we are not the only country in the continent. Your Morocco, your Egypt are in that belt. Now, hence the department has started programs on the early reading program that has been initiated and piloted in all the provinces. We are now going to be rolling it out unless we address that problem at early childhood development, as well as the foundation phase. It's only then that we'll be able to address the problem of the repetition rate and reduce it drastically, and then reduce the dropout rate, and then we'll see the throughput at the end, and learners starting from grade 1 in big numbers and finishing in big numbers at grade 12. So that's the challenge that we're grappling with, but the department is putting some measures to address that. Then on the issue of the tree planting, Indeed, we used to have this in our days, but I could see that we are no longer. In fact, the issue of environmental awareness, I think we're a bit thin. I want to be honest. Not only as a department, I think as government as a whole, we're a bit thin on environmental awareness, even in communities. And it's a matter that I think we are taking note of. That we have, as part of these monthly programs, these thematic programs for the month, your Youth Month, your Mandela Month, your Women's Month, the Premier is always putting a finger on all departments to have programs to mark those thematic areas. And I think we will be looking into this thing, taking from the advice that you are giving us on this thing, tree planting, but couple it with environmental awareness, us stepping up on environmental awareness and the impact of climate change and how we can be able to mitigate it. I think we're still thin, but we're taking note of that. Then on the encouragement of parents to send children to school, we are trying our level best to conduct advocacy on the admission policies and all that, ensuring that learners are at school and the administration for next year and the registration is done this year. We always have some communication through the radios and also and other platforms to mobilize parents and communities to ensure that registration for the following year takes place in good time. But on the issue that we are raising, we are spot on. There are learners that are supposed to be at school that are roaming the streets in both rural areas as well as our townships. And it's a matter that we are lifting through the forums that we have set up with stakeholders in education, including unions, civil society, through the DEF, District Education Forum, that we have established in each of the 12 districts that we have set up. So we want to embark on such programs using those forums. 2, we have the quality learning and teaching campaigns, structures that we have also revived, and they go from province up to a school. So we also want to utilize those as a way of addressing this problem. Thirdly, following this Nyobeni tavern incident, we had a discussion in the department to say, much as this thing has not happened in a school, but majority of the kids that were there are of school-going age, up to 18. Majority of them were school-going age, the youngest being, I think, 13. So it means there's a problem at a household level in the family. And we're saying, what should be the response of the Department of Education in that problem that is taking place in society? Without saying, nursing education, we don't, that thing does not affect us because it happened in a tavern and outside the school. And we're saying our contribution as a department is to protect learners from dysfunctional family units, so that at least we can save them and they can get quality education. So we're exploring a way of partnering with social development, Department of Health, that can conduct a profiling of those households where there is dysfunctionality in the homestead, either it's a child head at home, or it's orphans, or the parents are heavy drinkers or have social problems that are affecting learners. So we're saying we need to find a way of intervening as education there, either pulling those learners from dysfunctional homes, put them in a hostel, so that they can be able to get quality education, and so that we break that cycle of poverty and complications of the family and the psychosocial impact of that to learners. That's how Tina as education, we can be able to break that. So we're currently working on that as of now and see whether we cannot revive, because we do have hostels, especially in the Sarabatman area in the western part of the province, as well as Amatole West, that are highly underutilized, as well as the Joe Gabi area that are highly underutilized. So we can shift those learners into that, but it's going to require an integrated approach beyond education, which is going to involve health, involve social development, as well as local government to be able to pull through that program. But these are some of the ideas that we have started to engage on as a response to the societal ills that are taking place there. I think, let me stop there.
Thank you, HOD. Thank you, MEC. Commissioner Makwetla?
Thank you, thank you. Most of my questions have been answered. But I keep asking myself the question, what do parents do during the holidays when the children hardly have breakfast, and then comes lunch time, then there's nothing? And then just a comment to say, I do empathize with parents not planting trees because of the drought. There's the lack of water. Yeah, that's.
Thank you, Commissioner. Over to you, MEC, HOD.
No, thanks, Commissioner. I remember this discussion, Commissioner, was a bit topically during the COVID-19 in the country, whether schools must be able to provide the school nutrition to kids at home. We then, at that time, introduced a model that was anchored on social development through food packages, so that we can be able to reach out to those kids. Because we were contemplating a risk, because there was a risk obligation at that time, because at that time of the COVID, when this matter was picked up, was that how are you going to make sure that they arrive at school whilst we are at level 1? But we then said, probably let's find a partnership program with social development, so that the handouts or the food parcels that goes to households also include this aspect. I remember there was even a court order on this one. There was even a court order forcing the Department of Education to respond on this. But it is part of the shortcomings that I can confess that it is a challenge for us because of the sector, its own policy and regulation. So you needed a bit of an integrated approach on it that is intergovernmental for you to succeed on this one. Of course, it's something that we are busy engaged on as government. How do you ensure that our approach of government is not so selective, does not marginalize the vulnerable people on the basis of either policy gaps that are there because we're one government. You know, so I'm saying it's part of the assignment that we're currently engaged on, taking the lessons from the COVID-19 at level 1, because we were a bit exposed as government on this one at that time. That once schools closed, there comes an additional crisis of poverty in the country. That's why the debate commissioner was a bit serious of whether schools must be closed or not. Because from us as academics, educationists in the sector, it was not just about the accumulation of knowledge and skill of learners, but we have become to be a buffer of ensuring that these kids have a better livelihood standard. Because once you close schools in terms of those standards that were set in COVID-19, you are bringing them back into households, and households do not have food. So that was the dichotomy that we as a country were trying to scientifically respond to. Because the issue was not just about the academic progression, it was also about the livelihoods that must also be defended in that particular context. Hence, I'm saying it's part of the ongoing discussion that we have with social development, with Dr. Da, via the partnerships, and also with the Department of Health in terms of the profiling of the families that are concerned that the HOD has alluded into.
Oh, you're fine, HOD. Okay, thank you, MEC. Thank you, Commissioner. You answered. Just a few questions from my side. I think let me start with a few. Is my microphone fine? I think so. And then allow you to provide a response, and then we can maybe continue with my second set. So throughout the past few days, we've heard a lot of information, and a lot of data was shared as well by Stats SA, by the Children's Institute, the Department of Health, Office of the Premier. So it has appeared that stunting in the province is a big issue. Nationally, excuse me. Nationally, it's at 27% of children are stunted. Provincially, it's 25%. So in the Eastern Cape, 25% of the kids that are reaching your schools or are in your schools are stunted. Now, you're speaking about being an educationalist, MEC, absolutely. So you will agree with me that those 25% might not be performing to the standard that they could have been performed at if their stomachs were full. So as the Department of Education, you will have an academic rate that might not be as high as it could have been if we addressed 25% of our province's kids at an earlier age in respect of hunger. So that's the premise I'm now moving from. You've indicated that grade R's are now being included in most schools. My question to you is, how many schools out of all of the primary schools in the province are now inclusive of a grade R? And what are your plans in expanding the grade R's to other schools as well, with the premise that I've provided to you now? Because it does appear the younger the children, the more affected they are in terms of stunting. So the developments, if we can get them proper meals earlier, their performance are going to be increased later. HOD, you made the example. If we get that at ECD level, and the reading for to understand, at the end of the day, your dropout rates will be less, your repetition will be less. So with that premise, can you provide me with a bit more information on grade R and the potential of increasing the inclusive or primary schools which will have grade R available? So maybe I think if we can pause there with the grade R question first.
No, thank you very much, Chair. I think this program of integrating grade R started some time ago. I think as far back as around 2010 to introduce grade R formally in schools. And that also informed even the infrastructure grant that it should also accommodate your grade R, including the designs of the classrooms as well as their ablution facilities for the grade R. In a school, you'll find that theirs is more or less separated from the rest of the school from grade 1 up. It's always given their own secluded area in the same yard, because we don't want them to be tempered with other ones that are elderly. So we have also influenced the infrastructure grant on how to deal with that one. So I think if there are still schools that do not have grade R, I think there are very few. But I can commit that we can supply that information, detailed information, as to how many schools now. But I think the majority of them do have grade R, because it's a program that we've started a long time ago to integrate. What we are currently now dealing with now is the new function that has come from social development with effect from April of your 0 to for your ECD. That has come as a function to education. Even on that one, there's still a lot to be done. Even on that one, I think it's linked to the earlier question of learners that are still roaming streets and all that. The current stats from your Stats SA is reflecting that in the whole country we have about 7 million of learners between, I think, 0 and 4 or 0 to 5 that are supposed to be accessing your early childhood development. But according to our enrollment, our figures in the sector, we have about 1.6 million that are registered in early childhood development centers in the country. So which means we have a difference of about 5 million that is still not accessing early childhood development in the country. So it's a huge task that the education sector, but not alone. You cannot deal with that thing alone. We need a multi-pronged approach to ensure that we create access, especially with the fiscal constraints that we currently have as a country, to expand the scope, build new ECD sites. So we need to have partnership with other non-governmental institutions around the provision of the early childhood development, which will then be able to cater for this problem you're standing at a very early age, see, address it holistically. But we also have, as a social transformation cluster, an integrated program on a range of issues. One of them is the issue of poverty eradication. We have profiled the wards in the province where there's a problem of poverty. And we have started to do some work in that, but I think we still need to do more to reflect integration in the way we deal with poverty, and so that we can have, meaningful impact down the line. So I think these are some of the things that I think we need to do in order to respond fully to address the problem you're standing. But I agree with you, if there are so many kids that are standard, that is also going to contribute towards their academic performance at the school level.
No, absolutely. Thank you, HOD. So just to follow up on that, once the ECD, or since the ECD function has now been moved to education, will that then include the expanding of the school nutritional program to them as well?
Yes, concretely, yes, because the policy, as outlined, of the function shift to us. There are two components there that are fundamental. One is the research that indicates that commissioners, the cognitive development of a learner is more scientifically peaked between 0 and 1,000 days. So if you miss that period, you run a risk of not being able to detect what could be the remedial aspects of development that are needed. So that's one area from an academic point of view. But again, the shift itself arrived in the department when we were busy engaging extensively. What should be our approach as a country in professionalizing the foundation phase education, the ECD, so to speak? Because the success of education and the nation's building project depends on our own commitment on the foundation basics. So that's why we then agreed that it will be imperative for government to be a bit meticulous in ensuring that, one, we professionalize the foundation phase education via the function shift of the ECD. Also, we bring a bit of professionalization even on the recruitment of the practitioners that have to get into that sector, so that you can maximize the evolution of the development of the kids at that particular level. We are not supposed to see challenges, for example, if I can, by the lack of a better word, challenges of a development of a learner at a later stage. We should have been picked it at that level. So I'm then saying, the introduction of the SNP to that space is part of the discussion that the HOD has actually alluded into, and the alignment and harmonization of the policies is part of the HOD has actually alluded into, and also the budget allocations thereof. Because remember, a policy must, a budget must follow a function. And you can't take that decision if you're not going to budget it. So by extension, we are at bit ready to deal with that particular now in terms of the allocations of the budget, to ensure that there is stability, to ensure that there is sequence of development and the like.
Thank you, MEC. I think that is such an important intervention, because I think once we can get the ECD sector to benefit from your school nutritional program, a program that government has rolled out, which has been so successful, you will be able to see the significant effects of that in the primary and secondary school phase in terms of performance. Because our kids will probably not be stunted to the effect that they are currently at 25% rate. So I'm looking forward to an almost urgent movement of the adoption of that policy, of the allocation of that budget and the rollout, especially in this province, so that we can see the immediate effects of that. And I'm very excited to hear about the rollout thereof. Then in terms of HOD, you've referred to the integrated program, and this is what we've put to DSD as well. We recognize those programs are in place. When you look at the data and the stats that have come through, it shows that there's been no decrease in the stunting of the kids, despite years and years and years and years of implementation of the programs that are already available. So it does show almost a red flag that we seem to have to do something else as well. On top of that, one of the participants indicated this might not have been the number if those programs were not in place. It might have been far worse, and that we recognize. But we're still sitting with children dying of malnutrition and hunger. So we recognize that, and we know that it was, I think it's about HOD, it's 39 wards, et cetera, et cetera. So we know of that, but the numbers are not dropping. So clearly there needs to be an intervention at another level, an urgent intervention potentially to address that. So we've put that to other participants as well to say that how are we thinking outside of the box to address this? I've noted MEC and HOD, the breakfast initiative, which is really exciting and a really good measure that it seems like it's already having some impact. Now I'm putting to you, is that something that can be scaled? That's my first question. The second one that I want to, what we've heard as well, is that apparently the prevalence of malnutrition that is presented at the Department of Health unfortunately comes at a very late stage. You've indicated as well to be able to identify those families most in need and their hotspots. Now, the information that we've received is as well that these come from teenage mothers. And we know that the number is quite high of teenage mothers in the province as well. So the malnutrition walks hand in hand with teenage mothers. And then I'm going to throw another aspect to you that UNICEF and our other presenters have indicated is a low breastfeeding prevalence within the province. So we've got teenage mothers, we've got child malnutrition, and we've got low breastfeeding prevalence. So again, thinking outside of the box, we know the policies in respect of pregnancy of school learners, but is there potentially some education that is being provided in respect of breastfeeding, the benefits of breastfeeding? Some learners leave their babies at home with the extended family and then attend school again, so they can't breastfeed. Is there a potential of having a soft approach to this, to say that learners might be available or able to express breast milk, if they have babies at home during certain periods, or giving a safe environment for them to do that, and popularizing that idea? I'm really trying to think outside of the box now, because there's a hand in hand between teenage mothers' malnutrition of their babies and breastfeeding prevalence in this province and nationally as well. So the last one that I want to ask you is load shedding in terms of your kitchens and the ingredients for the meals that are being provided. One of our investigations, we went to a site where they indicated that one of the fridges was broken down. So I think you recall the incident where the children, I think it was about 30, were rushed to hospital due to food poisoning, and then it was the mass, apparently, that was implicated. So are your schools being affected by load shedding to an extent that it can have a negative impact on the school nutritional program? And let me just then throw in the last one, now that I'm on load shedding and electricity. Water tanks. Do all your schools have rainwater tanks? And if not, is that something that one should start looking for further partnerships with? Because we've indicated that there are some external issues why schools might not have the Commissioner, you made a point of the garden, the food garden, sorry. Is there something that we can put in place or motivate for or promote to assist these schools in having these food gardens where you've indicated they do not? So that's a mouthful. Let me pause there.
I am whispering with the HOD that let me take the lighter one. The stronger ones will come to him. No, surely, commissioners, the load shedding is a killer punch. Unfortunately, especially in education, because most of the schools we have rely solely on the energy, electricity, so to be precise, in terms of the variety of programs that are rolled out in the institutions of learning that we have. Whether you talk the school camps, for them to prepare for the current trial examinations that are knocking the door, also the media examinations that they were writing recently. So we had to think outside of the box, try to mitigate the effect of it, as you say so that we can be able to not to be distracted from the targets that we have on the basis of the load shedding. So we had to create some innovations academically so to ensure that our interventions are talking directly to what is an immediate challenge in relation to the load shedding itself. But coming to the food security itself, as part of the challenge of the load shedding, yes, you are spot on that one. We because we transfer monies to schools, schools have developed a different approach now of purchasing food. They don't buy in bulks so that they can easily finish and go back and buy it. But that tedious process now has a potential to consume the money, and to consume the money, I mean the time of the school. Because remember, some of the schools are not as populated in terms of the staff as they should be. So it will be imperative that you deal with aspects and close them. So I'm saying it's a matter that, of course, we are working on it, and has got a dire effect, not just on food, but also on the academic progression of the learners. As you would understand that the majority of the rural schools have got a variety of interventions that are needed to be done. And that's where we bank in terms of ensuring that we get the targets that we would want to get. But secondly, Commissioner, on the issue of the provisioning of water, again, there it is unfortunate, in particular in the province. For example, let's take Gqeberha. Gqeberha is a hotspot area now because of the scarcity of water. If the water servicing centers are unable to provide water for themselves, so it's going to be difficult for them to provide water for other people. So, but how do you then, as education, mitigate on the failure of the local government providing food and providing water for itself and also for the entities of government that are there? We have then set aside, should be about 48 million, if I'm not mistaken, for the provisioning of water, because this question came from the legislature about 2 weeks back. How are we going to ensure that we are not distracted by the absence of water in some corners of the province on the basis of the drought and also on the basis of any form of a crisis that arises? So we are ready for that, but equally, in the recent times, we commissioned the, what's this implementing agency? Matola Water to deal with this question. So that they provided us with tanks, 776, if I'm not mistaken, a year back. And also, we have commissioned them for boreholes programs, because there are those areas in the province that even if there is rain, generally, you don't have water harvesting mechanisms. So we then opted to have a hybrid approach, that of boreholes, so that you can sustain them moving forward, because water is a need. So I'm saying it's a matter that is looked after, based also from the lessons of COVID. What is good about COVID, bad as it is that it has opened eyes for nations worldwide. That things that we were unable to do, and the things that we were going to do them 100 years to come, were able to be done within a space of weeks. And the question is now, how are we going to sustain that momentum? from the lessons of the COVID that have provided to us. Hence, I'm saying the creativeness of the sector in ensuring that drought areas are provided by through boreholes has assisted some of the schools and also responded to the challenge of the fiscus that they have, because some of the schools might not have enough money to continue to buy water from the local municipalities. So you need a sustainable development program to ensure that at least they can sustain themselves moving forward, either through school gardens or providing water for feeding and whatever that is going to be needed. Thanks, sir.
Thanks, MC. On the first question on the integrated programs to address poverty, that seem not to be making a serious dent on the poverty status in communities as well as the issue of stunting. I think we need to have a review on the intervention plans that we're putting in place, as well as our implementation approach. I don't think below just the 39 wards that we have targeted, there is as detailed plotting and targeting now at the household level. I think we need that detailed planning around that and targeting. 2, we need to have more sustainable approaches than the current relief programs that we are currently embarking on. To give people a food parcel is just a relief. You are not empowering them to take themselves out of poverty completely. You're just giving a relief. I think there's a gap there. There's a mistake or a gap in the way we are responding to the problem. So my view is that we need to review the approach such that we empower communities to utilize the resources and the assets that they have. They do have land. In our generation, we grew up having these food gardens that we're talking about now, that we're saying must be introduced in schools. They were in our homes. You used to start there from school. You used to start there before you go to school. When you come back, even if there is no food yet that is ready, you go to the garden to pick up carrots, to pick up beetroot, to pick up turnip, and you can just take it there and eat. And it has got all the nutrients that you can think of if it is eaten raw. So we used to have that, but that is no longer the case now. So communities are not empowered to utilize the asset that they have. That's the gardens. And they are majority of them are fenced, but they are no longer worked on. So I think that's our integrated approach should be going to the empowerment of people to be self-reliant, and the program should be sustainable and should be able to take people out of the dependency on the state for their survival. The second point I want to raise is the 350 that we are giving to unemployed. Other people are using it effectively for what it is intended for. But the rest, they are drinking it that in our village, for instance, in Untitled, my rural home, there's a term that says 350 does not cross Hebe River, because they take it from the post office 111 kilometers away from my village. On their way back from that post office, just 5 kilometers before you reach my village, there's a tavern there. So they start in that tavern, they finish it there. So it does not cross Hebe River back home. That's the term that they use. That it 350 That's what they say. So you have also that problem. I think even as government, we need to rethink some of the interventions such that they're able to empower people to get out of poverty completely rather than to give them handouts and they are used for things that they are not intended for. So I think these are some of the things that we may have to consider, but we have taken note of the issues and also the gaps that we have picked up through the research that has been presented by various stakeholders. We're taking note of that. We'll go back to the social transformation cluster to further engage on these issues that you have also raised here. Then on the issue of the linkage between teenage pregnancy, malnutrition, as well as teenage pregnancy, and also the problems of young mothers unable to breastfeed when they are at school. The MEC and the minister are looking at this issue. Firstly, the issue of teenage pregnancy, which is always blamed at the Department of Education. And the argument of the Department of Education is that we don't have beds in schools. What we have is furniture, not beds. This thing is not happening at school. It is happening in communities. And now we are lambasted for having high numbers of learners that are pregnant. When the problem is a dysfunctional home, when the problem is a dysfunctional community that does not have community values, and also a family units that do not have family values that are adhered to by learners because of a number of things. The dysfunctionality of that, the movement of parents to Johannesburg or to Cape Town, leaving parents alone, leaving parents with the grandmother and all that. So we don't have stable families. And that all leads to this teenage pregnancy. And it then snowballs in creating other problems, related problems, associated problems. Like now, because we have a policy as a department, that just because a kid gets pregnant, she should not be excluded from accessing education. So she is allowed to go back to school immediately after delivery. But again, there are problems in that he has to be at school. There's no time to breastfeed. And we don't have early childhood centers or health care centers for babies of other kids. Now it's becoming more complicated, and it can have unintended consequences. That it can encourage these learners to continue to get pregnant because the conditions are going to be created for them at school. So it's a very complicated discussion. But what we are currently doing as the department, we are working with the Department of Health in embarking on programs of the productive health education, reproductive health education in our schools and advocacy, and also how we can prevent it before it can happen. But the major problem that we still need to tackle is the source of the problem, which is in the community as well as in the family. But we're trying our best from our side, but it does not originate from the school. It originates from society. And it must be addressed at that level if we are to overcome this thing and ensure that we don't have kids that get parents, and because some of them, they end up dropping school completely. And we have all sorts of problems that you have raised. I just want to stop there, Chair.
HOD, I think I'm done from my side, Commissioner. Any?
Can I just maybe, you did also ask about the rollout of breakfast.
Just one moment. So if you're going to provide evidence, we just need to, you have to administer the oath. Commissioner, I'm in your hands. Well, do we not have time? Is it possible that we can have a written response, sir? We're running a bit out of time, but it's such an important discussion to have, and the rollout of breakfast certainly can make a huge impact on this topic. So MEC and HOD, if we can maybe request a response on that one, that would be very helpful. That's it from my side, Commissioner.
Yeah, no, we are having a whole host of other people. So because the issue, Honorable MEC, that were discussed today, they were so interesting that we wouldn't cut it short.
We take more time.
Yes, whilst we're talking about the right to food and as well as nutrition, you spoke very well, both of you, specifically to Section 27 that talks about the right to food and water. I was impressed, HOD, when you linked that with climate change, the lack of water, when you were talking about the addressing of the tree planting. You understood it so very well that it also climate change is affecting environment and the like. But having said that, it's just a parting shot. I want to also applaud you once more, as I did at the beginning. Education, MEC, you were talking about that, no, it is the HOD, that the education was thinking about hostels, but will rope in the Department of Health when hostels are being utilized, so that you look all the rights because they are interrelated and the like. But finally, without taking much more time, you know, education or the education department, we are producing a whole host of people. We are producing lawyers, which they speak tongues. You as educators, you are in loco parentis, meaning you are in the place of a parent. You are training the learners also to exercise, and as a maxim says, mens sana in corpore sana, a sound mind in a sound body and the like. That needs to be addressed. You produced what is contained in the Constitution, the preamble, when it says, through the freely elected representative, we adopt this Constitution as a supreme law of the land, so as to heal the divisions of the past, establish the society based on human rights and the like. You see, and all of those people are coming out of the hands of educators, in the hands of teachers. That is my parting shot. But then we're talking about the provision of food. And then Commissioner Makwetla did ask what happens when the children are not at school. I want to find out, when you are taking the children out on trips, do parents need to provide scarftin? You will pardon me, I don't know whether it's the correct word. I was taught under Bantu education. We call it scarftin. Or are they wholly in your hands, even when you are taking them out for games with other schools? Or parents have to augment that they should have food when they are being taken out? That's only that last question. Thank you very much.
Maybe the HOD will flank me on that one. No, we are taking full responsibility, precisely because majority of the schools now are Section 21 schools in terms of the South African SASA. For the allocation of the budget takes to schools, the school funding norms takes care of that. So that's why whenever they go either on music or on sport or on any trip that is designated for a school to take, the responsibility is with the school. In essence, is with us. So there is no middle ground on that one. It's just us from a transport point of view, from a food point of view, from an accommodation point of view. And we were then contemplating now, SG, a discussion on the transport policy, interprovincial transport policy, so that we can be able to augment any gap that is there. Because you'll remember that the current policy on transport of kids does speaks to the levers of the public policy transport. For example, take the case of the school that Mbizana one, is it Mbizana? I'm not sure. With the kids that have an accident going to sport in Joburg. So I'm saying there are those discussions just to polish up some policy fundamentals so that you can be a bit tighter in ensuring that you secure the lives of those young ones and also the staff itself, the teachers concerned. Otherwise, it's a full responsibility of the department.
Commissioner Makwetla, you fine?
The main thing is that when you go and you reintegrate with the other stakeholders, you will include us and not forget us.
My commissioner is lining us up for lots of work this time. No, just thank you from our side, Commissioner. I think that brings us to the end of the session. HOD, MEC, we know you have a full schedule ahead of you as well today. And the information you've provided is, I would have loved to engage with you the full day, even in terms of the budgets, the 3 rand per learner that has only increased with 9 cents in a year, now looking at the cost of living, whether that's in fact sufficient to provide food for the kids. We can go on in terms of the undocumented learners. How are we addressing that? We can go on for the whole day, but let's schedule for another session. But for now, you are released, and we thank you for your participation at our session. Thank you so much. Tim? We have a very strict program director here, Commissioner. Is it possible for a 5-minute body break before the next session? Just a body break. No tea, Commissioner. No tea. All right.
Tim, we are saying so.
Yes, can we proceed? Just give the name. Bowen. Ms. Bowen, are you able to hear me?
I am, yes. Can you hear me?
Good morning, Ms. Bowen. I have to apologize again. I know this is the second attempt of us trying to get you here and you having been available, but us just running out of time. This is such an important discussion, Ms. Bowen, that we just want to get out of it as much as we can, but we do apologize and we really thank you for your participation and your patience with us.
Okay, sure.
Ms. Bowen, I'm going to give you over to Commissioner Stipends for the administration of the oath.
Thank you very much, Dr.
Sure.
Kota. Without further ado, Ms. Bowen, mine is to administer the prescribed oath. Before doing that, I've got to establish from you whether do you have any objection towards taking the prescribed oath? Because if that is the case, then we do an affirmation.
I have no objection, no.
For record purposes, may you just state your full names and surname?
Carrie Beth Bowen.
Do you swear that the information that you will present will be the truth and the whole truth and nothing but the truth? If that is the correct, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bowen. You may even then proceed and make your presentation.
Okay, thank you. My name is Carrie, as mentioned. I'm a social worker and I'm representing the King's Child and Youth Care Centre, where I am involved on a part-time capacity. I'm representing Tracy King, the current director of the Children's Home. We are a registered non-profit organisation in Glen Eden, just outside of East London. We provide temporary safe care to children in need from the ages of birth to 7 years. We are registered with the Department of Social Development and we currently have 50 children in placement there between the ages of 0 and 7, as mentioned, although we do have older children who remain on due to difficulty in identifying a suitable alternative for them. So some of our children have unfortunately exceeded that age range. We are unfortunately not receiving any financial support or funding from the department. We have applied for 5 years consecutively and been denied any financial support. And as such, the home is running through funds that are raised through the goodwill of the community, and that presents obviously some challenges for us. The children we are serving are children who have been brought to us either because they've been abandoned or they've been removed due to concerns about abuse or neglect in their home environments. So these children are very needy. They certainly present with symptoms of malnourishment and various health needs, emotional needs, trauma, and other issues that have impacted upon them. So we're grateful for the opportunity to share a bit about what we're doing and to have a voice to advocate for these children. And we feel that we are speaking not just for our organization, but the many others in the city who are also providing this kind of service with limited support. Yes, so I am open to any questions that you might have. I will tell you a little bit more about how we function as a home. We have four units where the children are cared for by a house mother. We have on-site early childhood development teachers that are providing education to the children. We have various professionals who volunteer their services, for example, a physiotherapist who comes in to provide physiotherapy. We have some therapeutic support that is able to be provided for the most traumatized children. We assist with facilitating contact visits where appropriate, where children are needing to see family members, or we're very much about supporting the enduring family bond and helping them have that sense of belonging. So where possible, we support and facilitate that, working with the child social worker. We have recreational facilities on site and try and provide a stimulating environment for the children with a lot of warmth and support, and help them to recover, to heal from the experiences, and just to thrive in an environment where their basic needs can be met. But yeah, that does come with quite a number of challenges for us. And it's an ongoing battle from month to month to ensure that the needs can be met through, as I said, raising funds, reaching out, getting support, and trying to just meet the needs of these children, really.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Ms. Owen. May I then ask Commissioner whether you have any questions?
Thank you. Just maybe one or two questions from my side.
Sure.
Ms. Bowen, you talk on the challenges insofar as funds or fundraising is concerned. My question is, does your King's Children's Home get any funding from the Department of Social Development? And then coupled to that question will be, have you tried the National Lottery Fund, which is called Lotto? Those are my two questions that I would like to ask you.
Okay, thank you. No, we're not receiving any support from the department. We have applied for 5 years consecutively and been denied that financial support on the grounds of budgetary constraints, and that despite the fact that the children are all placed with us by the department. So obviously that lends some interesting challenges around that, but we have not applied for the Lotto funding. In my previous NGO, I had applied and been denied that, but I've been with the Centre for a year, and it's certainly something that we will explore. So yeah, we obviously need to try and ensure that we can be sustainable. However that happens, the current situation is that our funds are devoted to just meeting the basic needs, paying our staff. We obviously have a team providing care. We need 24-hour carers for the children, many of whom are infants and obviously waking at night for feeds. And so we need a team that is on board and attentive to the needs of the children. So yeah, sustainability is key, and we'll be exploring that in whichever manner we can to ensure that we can really deliver quality care to these very vulnerable and needy children.
Thank you, Ma'am. Commissioner Makwetla?
Yeah, thank you. All I can say, Ms. Bowen, is thanks for providing the warmth and support to the four units and on site. Thank you.
Ms.
No problem, sure.
Thank you, Ms. Barron. Just one or two questions from my side. Now, we take note of the fact that you've applied for funding. Now, my understanding is once you are not provided with funding or your application is rejected, reasons are provided, and you've indicated that they say budgetary constraints. Is there any other reason that they've provided? Number two is, have you appealed this decision to the MEC, and what has the outcome been?
Okay, no, as far as I'm aware, it was purely cited as budgetary constraints being the reason for the funding application being denied. And there was no appeal made up till now. Yeah, it was the director, Tracy King, who handled this application, so I would need to consult with her further. But yes, certainly there was no other reason provided, and we were encouraged to reapply in the following year and to see if we were successful at that point. We have certainly been considering what avenues we can take to appeal that decision. The reality is that our time is absorbed by the commitments and demands that we have in the home, so it's not always easy to assign time to such areas. You know, if we had more staff and more manpower to take on these different areas, we would certainly do that. But we are kind of committed to the most primary needs that are coming up with the children, which is health needs. We at the moment have a lot of children with special health needs requiring hospital visits. The reality is that requires a staff member to travel quite a distance to a hospital to stay with the child whilst they are receiving the care. And yeah, so I think the reality is due to staff constraints, and there's certain areas that we don't always get to. But yes, certainly we would be grateful for advice in terms of avenues to pursue and how to actually challenge that ruling.
No, absolutely, Ms. Brown. I can imagine the attention that is required on the ground is very much more urgent sometimes than paperwork. But I do encourage you to just ensure that you exhaust all avenues. We need to make sure that any application that has been rejected, that you have exhausted the internal mechanisms that are available in terms of legislation, so as to appeal any decision that has been made. And like I say, those are set out. So we do encourage you to do that, because certainly financial support to your centre, which you have now indicated, the department are placing children there, but they are themselves not providing funding for these children. And as we know, as per jurisprudence, that once parents are unable to care for children and the department removes those children, the children's needs become the responsibility of the state. So surely there has to be some level of support. So we do encourage you to follow all of those avenues. Then just a quick last one from my side. One of the, I know our investigators were also in contact with the centre, and the information that was provided to us was that 20 out of the 50 children that were admitted at some point at your centre presented with signs of malnutrition. If you can elaborate for us on how that would look like and what your responses then would be as a centre.
Okay, sure. Yes, I mean, as we know, the children arrive and we don't always have clarity on their home circumstances. The information is often quite sketchy, sometimes abandoned children with no comprehensive history of the early days of their existence. And we know that prenatally, deprivation at that stage also has a lasting impact. So we get children who present with low weight, being very underweight, lethargic, and not very responsive. There's a variety of issues that we'll present with, and then going forward, their development is delayed. We see they're not meeting their milestones. We train our staff to be able to pick up on concerns and be aware of what the child's infant should be doing at what stage of their development. And then obviously if there are concerns, we flag those and we follow up on those. But yeah, certainly just that failure to thrive, and it impacts all round, not just physically, but I think that responsiveness from the child, that ability to connect emotionally. If a child is very lethargic and just kind of using all its energy to try and survive, then you can see that there's not really as much capacity for growth and for development. And yeah, longer term as well, educationally, we can see that a lot of our children have cognitive impairment. They are not able to learn at the same rate as their peers. They require some specialist support in order to actually make progress in an educational sense, and more one-on-one care is required, one-on-one educational input, speech therapy, physiotherapy. We see children with low muscle tone going forward. So it certainly has a really far-reaching impact on the children and their future prospects. And it would concern us that their future is undermined by the early deprivation that they've experienced.
Thank you, Ms. Bowen. I think my last just comment or question would be, what I'm gathering is you've been in the sector for quite some time. What should be done? What do you think can be done from your perspective to curb the prevalence of malnutrition and stunting in very vulnerable communities and children? As an expert, clearly working with kids, what do you think? What have you picked up is the trend? And what do you think can be done?
I think, access to resources being a key one, educating people on what is available to them, meeting people where they are at. And it's really distressing for me to see that this remains a problem and such a widespread problem. I've always been more centered around a preventative approach, and for me it's challenging to find myself in a space where I'm kind of on the front line, just feeling like a Band-Aid approach now, where I'm just dealing with children who've already presenting with these problems. But we can't turn away. I think people have been so desensitized over time, but the reality is there are so many people in need all around us. But I think that it starts with just everyone becoming more aware, becoming more sensitive to the needs of those around them, and looking out for one another. But meeting people with where they're at. It's no point having these elaborate plans, but it's not accessible to many people. So I think a lot of the babies that are coming in, we know, are from rural areas where there's perhaps been concealed pregnancy or just extreme poverty. I know over lockdown, the numbers increased in terms of child abandonment, with no access to grants, with unemployment, etc. It starts with that approach from just getting out there to the people and providing that support, and just making people aware of what's available and just being more active in it, not speaking so much but doing. I'm not a talker. I feel like you've got to be a doer. You can't just talk about these things, but get out there and do it.
Thank you, Ms. Bowen. Commissioner Makwetla, anything else from your side? Commissioner Sibanyoni? All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Bowen. It's valuable to speak to those who work very closely with the children in the sector, and we will definitely be taking note of your submissions. And I know our investigators still will be following up on some concerns that you've raised with our office as well. So thank you so much, and thank you for allowing us to engage with you, albeit a bit later than scheduled. And with that, you are released. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity.
Tembi, who are we seeing next?
Yes, next is Ms. Matbo Sitati from the Consumer Goods Council.
Okay, Ms. Tati, and is she online? Good morning, Ms. Tati. Are you able to hear us?
Good morning. Yes, I am able to.
We can hear you, Ms. Setati. Thank you so much for joining us online. I'm going to hand over to Commissioner Sibanyoni for the administration of the oath. Thanks.
Good morning, Ms. Tati.
Good morning.
Yes, I'm going to establish whether you've got any objection in taking the prescribed oath. If that is the case, then we administer an affirmation. Do you have objection?
I do not.
You don't?
No objections.
Right. For record purpose, will you please just state your name, your full names and surname?
Matlo Bartina Sitati.
Right. Do you swear that the information that you will present will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If that is the case, will you please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God"?
So help me God.
Thank you. You may then proceed making your presentation.
Thank you. I hope I'll be able to share my PowerPoint because I had prepared something. Let me just get to it. Okay, I hope you can see it from your side. Let's see, it's showing. Thank you so much.
Yes, we confirm we can see it.
So I'll go. Thank you. As I've already mentioned, I'm Matlo Setati. I am the executive for the Food Safety and Sustainability Initiative at the Consumer Goods Council of South Africa. And thank you for availing the time and the invitation to be with you to share what we have today. And by profession, I am a food science and technologist graduate. I have just concluded my degree, a master's degree in in food, nutrition, and security with the University of Stellenbosch. So this is not just a passion point for me. It is something that has been with me throughout my lifetime. I grew up in the sector as my father was one of the employees of the sector. So without wasting any time, just so that we understand who I'm representing today, we are officially registered as GS1 South Africa, and we have got a body, as you all know it, as the Consumer Goods Council of South Africa, which is an industry association. We do lobbying and advocacy on behalf of the retail and manufacturing sector and parts of the value chain. Either your laboratories, your auditors, and so forth are also part of our member base. And we are a not-for-profit company, and we get funded from mainly member payments where they subscribe, and this is how we run the NPO. And we pride ourselves as the hub where members can come and advocate and collaborate and share best practices. As you can see, our tagline is helping members trade better. So whichever that is a risk or impacts the sector, we will be at the forefront. We will gather members and experts in terms of common areas where we share and learn together so that we can improve whatever that we are doing. And these are just a few of the initiatives that we have in terms of our offering. And most of the food manufacturers, they know that if they get a barcode that is globally aligned, they do get it from GS1 South Africa, so that you can have traceability from South Africa up to whichever way you want to go, to Iceland or whichever. And this is how we operate as a sector globally. And what we do mainly, we support. We are on the daily with the members in the sector. We advise and we also advocate. So those are the core principles of what we do as the Consumer Goods Council of South Africa. So we were requested to share any programs that we have currently in terms of alleviation of poverty and hunger, and also the retail industry and how they discard food. And I remember smiling when I saw discard food. We had to go back and just check what discard food would necessarily mean in this case. But as you go, we will unpack everything that we do in that regard and any other information that we deem necessary. And I must appreciate the work that has already been done from the Commission. I found a document that you have put together, which really started the thought process in my head as I was preparing for this presentation. And it is so brilliantly done and nicely done and simplicity done. And I always, when I talk about food and nutrition, I look at myself first before I can look outward in terms of the everyone element that includes me and include the other players that could be on the external, and also the element of sufficient food and water. And I think that the previous speakers did allude to that, and also the issues pertaining to climate change, because in us talking about food, we do take cognizance of all the challenges that exist. However, we have to do the bare minimum in terms of making sure that as the everyone, in us having food, we play a role, and also as government as part of that. But my emphasis really, as I was already speaking to what the document that you have brilliantly done touches on, it touches on everything that we do focus on, and this is why we appreciate the value chain participation in everything that we do. But I would want to add nutritious food, safe food, and healthy food in terms of that, so that we fulfill the critical aspect of food security. So these are the pillars in everything that we do. We make sure that all of those boxes are ticked in all the programs that we have in place. We're just not doing it and produce food or avail food to the market without considering all of these aspects. So just a thought to ponder. I just thought to share this and just bring you more into the personal sense that I always start my conversations with, to say, in all of us that we are around here, considering everything challenges. I've got an uncle who says, bring me spinach. And I say, Malumi, get a pot and plant spinach. I know you're staying in an area where there isn't much soil. Can I bring you a pot so that you can produce your own spinach, because you love it so much? And these are the principles that I live by from a young age. Do we have compost bins? You can dig a hole and close it off so that the climate change doesn't get the effects from the food that you get to compost. Do we separate the food in our households? Do we have a separate bin that we can see that the food that we waste out of our households, how much is that? So that we can see it. If you see it, you can control it, you can manage it. But if you don't see it and they go all in one bin, you will never get the behavior change in your own households, because it starts with us before it goes external. And also the education, the information, in as much as it might be difficult for some people to access information, critical to understand what our labels on our food products are saying, and also in respect to the date marking, which is a conversation that we continue to have and continue to educate on. And the issue of donation. Do we ever donate? And I've had a number of speakers already alluding to this, and you've already had Food for South Africa, who has already, I'm sure, brought you up to speed in terms of this. And we're not forgetting the enabling environment, economy, water, information, education, rules and regulations. So without wasting any time, I'll go into the programs that we run as the CGCSA with our members, as we are the giant facilitator of all role players. We bring everyone into a room and we put programs together. We've got one, which is the South African Food Loss and Waste. It's a voluntary agreement that we put together since 2019, and we are working towards 2030. And in that, we have committed, the various members of the sector have committed to reduce food loss and waste in South Africa by 50% by 2030. We are adopting the food utilization hierarchy in our facilities, in our households, in our daily lives, so that we can ensure that we change our behavior in terms of the impact that we might be having in our facilities. And we have appreciated the research that has come through from either the CSIR and all the universities that we work with, to identify what are the challenges in South Africa. So we took that into cognizance, and then we put together this particular goals that we are working towards. So what we are saying is that either in your household, in your retail store, in your manufacturing store, in your food school feeding scheme, if you play a role, let's prevent and reduce the food loss and waste at source. Either you're a farmer or so. If you cannot sell the surplus food and it is still good in condition, feed the hungry, donate the food, soup chickens, food banks, and so forth. If it is no longer safe for consumption, defer to feeding animals. And also it must be safe for feeding animals. And if needed, you need to go and take it for digestion to recover the energy, so that we can have the energy in terms of from the food scraps that we're having. And composting, as well, as I've already alluded to. The last resort is we want to see food go into landfill. And just to answer to the questions of how do, I don't want to say retailers, because this is a collective problem. This is why I started with me in the household. How much of your food is going to landfill? So this is the hierarchy that we need to undertake. You're a retailer, manufacturer, farmer, household. This is the hierarchy that we need to adopt, so that landfill, the dustbin that gets collected Monday, Thursday, Friday by the municipality, should be the last resort. You should have already tried to do all of this above before you can get your food to go out. And I probably speaking to the converted, and we all know if we reduce this, and this is the element of why we have embarked on this journey, it is with regards to, we want to increase food availability. If food is lost and is wasted, food availability is affected. And if we're changing our way of doing things in terms of reducing food and waste, we boost productivity and economic growth. We can sell more food, we can employ more people. And the list goes on. Climate change features there in terms of methane gases that get excreted when food rots, and then it goes up, and then the climate gets to be affected. So we're making the agri-food system more resilient if we are reducing food loss and waste. And we appreciate the work from the FAO in terms of their guidance. And currently, we have a number of companies that have subscribed since 2020. We have 94 companies that have committed and raised their hand and say, we will work towards this. Let's try it in our facilities. Let's see where we have been going wrong, so that whenever we can whatever that we can change in our facilities, we need to do that. But I must say, it doesn't come without any challenges, as with any change mechanisms. Most of the manufacturers or retailers or the role players still fear donating food, because currently in South Africa, we are not like other countries where they said the one that donates, once you donate, you hand over the responsibility to the next person that you're donating food to. So we're dealing with food products that they might have passed their best before date. They might not be looking not like the ones that we'd like to buy in a store, but the liability that comes with food donations in South Africa, it is quite heavy, in that if you're a donor and anything happens in the supply chain of getting to the end user, being the consumer, if anything happens at a point of the consumer level and the consumer gets sick, everyone in that chain is liable currently. So you would need to prove beyond reasonable doubt. So this is what we are advocating to say, can we create an enabling environment? It has been done in other countries where you set guidelines. We are going to be setting our own guideline, is due to be concluded, where everyone that plays a role in food donation can know, what do I need to do? What elements of food safety do I need to maintain in my own area, so that we share in the responsibility, and should anything, God forbid, come, we will not have problems. But currently we're sitting with that challenge. And also we have found that the date marking, the food safety rules, if they are not clear, people are not able to play in the space. And also the cost associated with the donation, because the logistics parts have to come in, and then you have to identify a partner that you work with so that you can donate, so that we share that responsibility to alleviate the risks that might come with the activity of donation. And this is just our futuristic view in terms of where we are going. This year, we are setting a baseline where I think some 34 companies out of 40 have committed to send us their reports in terms of how they have done in terms of that hierarchy that we were talking about. So going towards 2030, we will know how people have improved in their facilities in terms of avoiding food loss and waste. And we truly appreciate the stats that came out of the CSIR. I think Prof. Olof has already presented to the Commission, in that it guides us, it brings us down, we get to base our knowledge onto something. And I think I just wanted to share this and emphasize the importance of date marking. We appreciate the work that's been done of people going out and monitoring what quality products are, or if the products are safe, but some shelf-stable products are just marked incorrectly in terms of the date marking, and this is the education that we spread. If you look at tea, possibly you can keep it for 5 years, it will still be there. Canned products, long life shelf, maize meal. Some people put a best before date, and people, when they go there without the understanding, they remove products from the shelves due to a best before date. There's a difference between a best before and an expiry date, and they do not mean the same. Shelf stable products, even before, after the best before, you can still consume them. I've had products that I consume way beyond the best before date. If they're shelf stable products, that is what would you need to apply. As it just that the quality might have gone down, but the food safety elements, they are still okay. So in terms of the other information that I had, was that due to other countries requiring a date marking on some products that don't even need a date marking, you'd find that soap has got best before or expiry. Does soap even ever expire? The qualities of the chemicals might go down in terms of making it white or whichever, but it doesn't really cause any safety risks. Sanitary pads, we've got a huge challenge in South Africa in terms of girls missing schools, but sanitary pads were removed from the shelves due to just an expiry date. they can still be utilized. So all of those, that's the education that we want to impart to the community and everyone concerned. And another program that we had in place was to answer to the obesity strategy under the Department of Health, where they requested that can we try and make healthy food options available in our market. So we worked with the manufacturers and the retailers together. They embarked on a journey since 2016 to 2019. We are going to be starting again this year in formulating new targets to ensure that the sectors work towards that. So each sector would have selected what they want to work towards, which is going to be impactful. And as you can see, reduction, reformulation of critical elements in the nutrition of people was targeted. Energy, sugar, total fat, saturated fats. They worked very hard in terms of reformulating products. And I remember the most loved cooking stocks that we love in most of our kitchen. You reduce something, the nature and the quality of the or the structure of the product that some of these products you can't just remove them. So we had to ensure that we work with them and then we advise them. So nothing goes without challenges, but they always try. Non-alcoholic beverage sector, reduction of sizes, and the health promotion levy came, so that then made it even more relevant for us to make what you call smaller portion pack sizes, reduction of salt, sugar, and saturated fats, so that whenever, because what we need to stress is that there will always be products that differ. The emphasis in this is that let's create options. We need products that are maybe high in sugar, high in sodium. For lack of a better word, we can use snacks or chocolates or so. But we said, look at an avenue where you can have options for people that want to change their lifestyles. Can they also still get that sense of, I'm having a chocolate, but it's with reduced sugar? By the day you've got mood swings or whichever, grab a chocolate in accordance with what you want, because we need to avail that platform of sovereignty in people, in them getting what they want in terms of what they are. But the critical thing is avail healthy food options in our offerings, in each and every offering that we have as a sector. And in terms of working through our members, we have collated this information because it's quite critical in terms of what the sector is doing. And this is just a few programs that they are currently running in their own establishments. Employee health and wellness initiatives, having breastfeeding friendly areas. We've also embarked on that journey as a CGCSA, where you just have a small room. A mommy can go there and then breastfeed using a pump, have a fridge, store their milk, and then they can take it home. Big ups to all breastfeeding moms. So this is the emphasis where we want to go. Those critical days when the baby is just born are very critical. When mommy goes back to work, she needs to continue breastfeeding. So these are what they have implemented in their areas. School initiatives that involve cis gardens. You can read the stats there. School nutrition and food safety education for food handlers, and school nutrition education aimed at learners themselves, and rewarding consumer healthy choices. Those that are on Vitality would know the participation that happens there, and also in store. If you buy, some retailers have got that, and food donations. I wouldn't even go into that. I'm sure Andy from Food For covered that quite massively. School feeding initiatives, also there's a great impact there. However, we want to do more, and our new CEO has said, Matlo, this is great, but we need to do more, include more schools. We need to map this. We need to track and trace and see where are the pockets in terms of where we haven't reached as a sector, as a collective. So this is what we're working towards. And also media and stakeholder presentations, as and when we are available, the media invites us, we try and go there, because we just don't have a budget to do massive media campaigns. And we're looking forward to, we're always applying for funding so that we can get the word out to educate people in terms of their health and nutrition. And just to share, one critical element in people coming together and making a difference was when we had the civil unrest and during the Durban floods. The sectors came together. We had the Mineral Council coming together and donating millions of rands so that we can avail the food through the NGOs like your SA Harvest, Meals on Wheels, or Food Forward, so that they can go into the network, because they have already mapped the network in terms of the smaller NGOs. So we worked towards that, and we did a massive job in terms of tons of food that were donated to KZN and Gauteng. And also the critical aspect, this is where now it comes together. Reduction of food loss and waste and donation. If people know where to go and tap in, there were pallets and pallets of dairy products that could not get to KZN or some areas of Gauteng. So they had to move them out of stock. In terms of making sure that they do not pass their date for acceptance with the NGOs. So they pulled in together, we pulled in the resources, we networked with everyone and made sure that the food products do not land in landfill. They would rather go and feed people that were currently were affected at that point. So with that, I hope I have answered the questions that were put through to us, and I am willing to take any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Satati. I think this is also very informative. I'm going to hand you over to Commissioner Sibanyoni for a first round of questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Carter. May I just mention that definitely your presentation talks to the 2022 theme of the International Nelson Mandela Day, to say, do what you can with what you have, wherever you are. When you were talking about encouraging your uncle to plant spinach into whatever container that he has. And then, but I just want to find out whether you were emphasizing to say your organization is funded by members. And then my question will be, is it intending to grow? In other words, not only to operate very small, but also to expand to such an extent that if a person has managed or learned the skills of providing this right to food or the child nutrition and the like, are they intending maybe to tap on the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development to say, Department, I've got these farming skills. Please provide me with more space with the land so that I can produce more than I have. And then that is the only question that I want to pose to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think you're raising a very critical question, and I will link it up to the various master plans that we have in place, where we were part of the social compact, where we were working with either your Department of Trade and Industry and Competition and your Department of Agriculture. As the private sector, we are always open, and you may have seen with the food loss and waste, we worked with two critical departments that are relevant to food loss and waste, which is the Department of Environment, Forestry and Fisheries and the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, who took us by the hand and say, we will support you. We will create an enabling environment. So we are always open in terms of collaborating with either government or private sector. And I think there's always an issue of funding that we need to work together on as a collective in South Africa. Because even if a farmer, compare them to an NGO that is supporting children that like the lady that has just spoken before me, we need to somehow have visibility of who is doing what in South Africa and what capabilities do they have and where are they struggling. We find that in most cases, people get funded over and over again, possibly because they write proper proposals. I do not know the reasons, but there are pockets. SMMEs all over, small farmers, black farmers have always been saying, centralize the funding mechanisms. If I have been funded before, why? You need to check where I am in terms of what I have done, in terms of growth, so that we manage these people from point A up until point Z. But just to share with you, the CGCSA is committed in being a social partner in terms of a private-public partnership. We have put together a foundation where we are trying to get to do this at a more scaled manner, because we have been working through our members, we'll continue working through our members, but as a collective, we want to find a mechanism, and we have put together a public benefit organization, which will be in the public domain soon enough once we have done all the branding and so forth, because we foresee an area and a critical role that we can play from the other projects that we have run outside of the PBO. So we're looking forward to that.
Thank you, Mr. Tati. Commissioner Makwetla, you've got nothing. All right. Mr. Tati, I've got a few questions for you. And first of all, congratulations. I think you said it's the master's degree from University of Stellenbosch. That's to be commended. And it's clear that you have a lifelong passion for this. That's why I want to really engage you now. Number one from me is in terms of the donations. You've indicated that there might be some hurdles that prevent potential donators to come to the table because of the liability, et cetera, et cetera. Now, is there a move to amend the regulations or the limiting legislation that is preventing us from, becoming a country of donators rather than wasters? So that's my first question in terms of the donation policies and regulations that are currently in place. Number two, just your view on the food basket, the current food basket that is being used to measure affordability and the food poverty line. You've mentioned a very critical concern, and that is whether healthy options are available. And in respect of looking at the food basket, that might include, I think it was mentioned, it's very much carbohydrate rich. There's some oils, but a lot of processed foods. Do you think, in respect of the funds that are available, that there are in fact healthier options that families can tap into, or is the options that are unfortunately available currently in respect of the poverty that we are experiencing as a country as well as a province, they are not going to fall within this basic needs food basket? Number three, I think I'm at number three now. We had UNICEF who indicated that there's still labeling concerns. I think specifically they indicated that the labeling regulations must be revised and that the front pack labeling issues must be expedited. Can you potentially comment on that, whether you have any information on that area specifically? And then, of course, the advertisements that are being provided to children regarding unhealthy food options. Do you think we are doing enough to educate our kids when these advertisements of, I'm not going to call it, let's say junk food, but maybe unhealthier options are very much in the public domain? Then maybe my last question before I'm going to give over to you is that we've heard throughout the past few days that there are a lot of programs in place. And you've also indicated that you've partnered with the social sector on some of your initiatives. But stunting is not coming down in the province. So it's clear that we need to potentially relook what we are doing and how we are in fact impacting those most vulnerable. So how do you propose, or what footprint do you perhaps have in the Eastern Cape? And how do you propose your footprint can be increased and your knowledge and capacity can be better utilized within the province to immediately bring some relief to this scourge of child malnutrition. So I know that's a mouthful. And then maybe my last question is whether your uncle, in fact, did then go and plant spinach. So I just want to know your sway capacity, or whether it was just advice or whether it was advice actually being used. So that's a mouthful, Ms. Setati, but I'm in your hands. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Let me start with the most awaited one, which is the front of pack labeling. And I must say, in the presentation before, part of the commitments that members had made previously was to include the critical information on the front of pack label. What is coming in terms of South Africa, what we hear from the Department of Health is that they want to localize it and not have the internationally already ones that are used. In most cases, you'll see a block on a label that critically gives you information in terms of what is the salt content, what is the fat content, or what is the sugar content, so that immediately when you look at a product, you can see those critical information if you are someone that looks at the labels and internalizes so that you consume food products that are within your health plans. So front of pack is already been done at a national or at global scale. However, South Africa is looking to localize it. So we have discussed with the department. We have their view. They are currently working towards having a dietary study which will inform how South Africa is standing in terms of the dietary aspects, and there's a lot of information in terms of NCDs, as you've already said, stunting, malnutrition, your non-communicable diseases, so that they consider all of that. The critical thing that we want to emphasize as the sector is that let the front of pack be something that will enable a consumer to make informed decisions, not to further confuse the consumer and make the consumer be in a tug of war with the food products that they consume on their daily. And we have consulted with other countries where we have seen that it got implemented in those companies. There was a drop in the purchasing of some products, but immediately after some years, it picked up again. Those products where people started to buy them because they got used to, I'm going to find this on a label, but I definitely want this product. The critical thing is education. People need to know what food products they have to consume, what is good for them, and this will bring us to the food basket. If you know what is good for you and you can interpret it in the status where you are, because our plates will always differ, but if plates will differ because of the economical status where we find ourselves, but we need to know the basics elements of what needs to be on a plate and the portion sizes that we have to consume as individuals. So that is the critical information. It is unfortunate that as the Consumer Goods Council of South Africa, we cannot, as I've already mentioned, this needs, campaigns take a lot of money. And for us to reach out and zoom specifically into a province, it is quite a massive job. Unfortunately, that's where we find ourselves. But all is not lost. If all the social partners come together, government, the sector, Department of Education, Social Development, Department of Health, and we say, as South Africa, what do we communicate? Can we go out on a massive national campaign where we are feeding one message from all platforms that we have? And I think one critical thing is that we need the political will. I wish for a day where we have a political figure that will be a champion for food and nutrition in South Africa. so that we get that education cements everything, and this is what needs to be embedded in the culture. We don't want to go into the details of how people view obesity in the country. There are experts that can talk to that, but it's education. You need to select the food products in accordance with the economical state where you are, but knowing that these are the healthy ones that we have to eat. And I've just learned something critical earlier in the year in terms of the definition of the underlying hunger, where people get to fill up their stomachs, but what they fill up their stomachs with, they are not hungry, but they are facing hunger because the food is not as nutritious as it needs to be. And now this brings us to the food basket in terms of the basic needs, and that it's carbon rich or it's got processed product. It goes back to the management and the guidance that we give to all role players. And I will touch on the school feeding nutrition in every element that we do as South Africa. And I think the Department of Health has done a great job in terms of the guidelines that they've put together, in terms of that hierarchy, the triangle that they have put together, in saying these are the critical things that you have to consume and have in your diet consistently. And that's the perfect guideline. If at any point any department deviates from the central pillar, which is the Department of Health, that we need to follow and needs to lead us, this is where the wheels might come off, in that everyone interprets it in their own way. But we need to be structured as a country to say, this is where we base our information. A dietary study has been done. This will need to inform the food basket and also the guidelines in terms of what needs to be either in tech shops, in schools, in our dining halls at work, what needs to be in a spaza shop. I'm just stressing it because that was my research topic. But spaza shops are doing well in terms of availing a variety of products in their stores. So we just need to be guided by science. We need to be guided by scientific information relevant to South Africa. That is why we are looking forward to the dietary study, which will include and will touch on the labeling, front of pack labeling, the food basket, and also what products can be allowed to be widely advertised. Because we need to have an identifier, we need to have a mechanism where I can put my food product through that process and say, beyond reasonable doubt, this cannot pass the elements. So that's what we are waiting for, because we cannot just rule out products without getting them through the process. And they are working on that, and we are looking forward to that, because that will give us great guidance. And I think the conversations are going ahead in terms of the adverts and the department, I forget the name of the department, in terms of the advertising to children. But there's currently guidelines that are managed by the ARB in terms of what could be marketed, and some parts of the sector has already committed not to market their products that are not suitable for children to outside into the market. And in terms of the donation, the regulation that currently exists under the Consumer Protection Act, the department is aware. We have engaged them. We have voiced our views in terms of the challenges that we are facing. However, they do have their own reasons in terms of the review or re-looking at the regulation. Unfortunately, currently that is not in the pipeline in terms of them reviewing that. Possibly because of other reasons pertaining to the challenges that we currently have in terms of the high rate of poverty and so forth. So the protection of the consumer comes first for the department, which we agree with. However, we will always emphasize that we need to relook at it so that we can emphasize that people need to start donating and not fear donating due to the liability that could come through to them. And in terms of my ankle planting, I think I will have to take the liberty of taking a plant with me so that I can showcase and extend it to him. He didn't uptake my influence didn't work in that respect, but we will keep trying, and I'm sure many people will get a pot to plant at least one vegetable that can survive in those areas. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. You have answered my questions very thoroughly, and we will definitely take cognizance of the information that you've provided today. Anything from your side, Commissioner? Commissioner Sibanyoni? Okay. With that being said, thank you so much for your patience as well with us, and we are hereby releasing you and wishing you well, and hoping that your efforts can also be upscaled and seen in the Eastern Cape to assist us in fighting this scourge of hunger and child malnutrition. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Program Director. That is you, Tembi. Okay.
The next speaker is the acting regional executive manager, Mr. Mbeta.
All right, perfect. So we're going to go straight to Mr. Mpeta. Mr. Mpeta, again, I have to apologize to you as well. Our program is running a bit late, but we deem this is a very important. Oh, we're on time. We made time. I saw the 9:50 and I saw it's or the 11:50 and 11:48. Okay, so I'm retracting my apology. Thank you so much for joining us here. You have noted the proceedings. You have seen what we are doing today and throughout the past few days as well. So without further ado, I'm handing you over to Commissioner Sibanyoni.
Will you please use your microphone? Also, on a light note, Tembi, we are like a pilot. Even if they take off late, then they increase the speed, and then they catch up with and the destination and the landing becomes the correct one. Mr. Peter.
Commissioner.
We share a famous name, Oscar Peter.
Yes, that's correct, Commissioner.
Any relationship?
Yeah, it's very complicated. Yes, there is. But I don't normally narrate.
Hold it there.
Yeah. Hold the grandson.
Yes. In fact, the Eastern Cape province has got many famous names that we all know through and the breadth of our country. But having said that, mine is just to administer the prescribed oath. If you've got an objection towards the prescribed oath, and then we resort to the an affirmation. So I want to find out from you, do you have any objection in taking the prescribed oath?
No objection, Commissioner.
Right, for record purpose, can you just say your full names?
My full name is Untitled Chapter. I'm the acting regional executive manager for SASSA in Eastern Cape.
Right. Do you swear that the information or the presentation that you're going to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If that is the case, then please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
Thank you very much. You can then proceed with your presentation.
Oh, thank you very much, Commissioners. Let me also appreciate the opportunity of being invited to contribute in your endeavors that are going to assist in fighting poverty. My presentation will just cover our role as SASSA in as far as poverty alleviation is concerned, which also include malnutrition. I'll skip other slides that are not very much important, but start zooming into our mandate as SASSA. SASSA is a Schedule 3A entity that is established by SASSA Act. It is an entity of the Department of Social Development. But our own focus then as an entity is outlined by our vision that states that we are a leader in the delivery of social security services with our mission to provide social security and related services. Values are outlined and guiding principles, which I will not cover. But in our midterm strategic framework from 2020 to 2024, we have committed 4 outcomes. Those outcomes with primary outcome, which is outcome number 1, talk to reducing levels of poverty within the country, but also economic transformation that is aimed at empowering individuals and families for sustainable communities. This will be done by facilitating access to developmental opportunities for social grants beneficiaries towards self-sufficiency. The third one is improved customer experience and also improved organizational efficiency. I would want to go back maybe to outcome number 2, that speaks to economic transformation and make reference to empowered individuals and sustainable communities. What we are currently doing, we do not want to contribute in creating dependency on social grants, but we also acknowledge that people do have potential to be self-reliable and self-sufficient. SASSA has got an arrangement with NFSAS where we identified child support beneficiaries who are doing grade 12. We take that database and share with NFSAS so that when they apply for university or tertiary education, they are not taken through a qualifying criteria or a means test, because the fact that they are child support grant beneficiaries, it means they are poor. So NFSAS agreed that those will be taken and be approved without being subjected to a qualifying criteria, only if they apply successfully to those institutions. We've been doing that on an ongoing basis. The intention is to try and avoid a situation which is prevalent, where a child support grant beneficiary will have a child who will be a child support grant beneficiary. So it's like moving from one generation to another. But if one of the children has been given an opportunity to education, the possibility is very high that at least you can break that intergenerational case of transferring poverty from one generation to another. In addition to that, through our procurement processes, we identify the community groups where there are cooperatives by mothers. We procure, for instance, school uniforms. We don't procure school uniforms in the bigger shops, but we encourage mothers through our sister organization, NDA, National Development Agency, that is training communities to get involved in developmental programs. They include cooperatives by women. Some of them are involved in making school uniform. We prioritize them so that they can be capacitated. Because if, for instance, there are 5 women in that cooperative, each of them is representing a household of 5 or more people. So if that one woman benefits, the whole family will benefit. So I just wanted to emphasize that we don't only issue grants, but we also make a reference or divert beneficiaries to economic and developmental opportunities. In the main, then, we intend to contribute in alleviating poverty, but also in ensuring that we contribute in the well-being of individuals, but providing the safety net. If I go further, I won't dwell on the adult grants. Out of the grants that we are providing, we've got 3 children's grants. One of them is the care dependency grant for children under 18, children that are living with disabilities. Then the second one, the most popular one, is the child support grant for vulnerable children under the age of 18 whose parents are not getting any form of income. But we also have the third one, foster care grant, where children are placed in foster care under the age of 18, but this one is renewable until the child is 21. If the child reaches the age of 18, for instance, while they're still doing grade 9, we don't remove them from the system. We will allow them to continue until they get to age of 21. Because in terms of the Constitution, if you are older than 18, you are not a child. But with foster care, we take that exception. Because they are still in school, we'll continue. We have updated our legislation because there's been a complaint that the child support grant is a very small amount, that 480 rands. The department took an initiative to review the regulations and included a child grant that is called a CSG top-up for orphaned children in child-headed households with caregivers or under adult supervision, where on that 480 rands, we add 240 to make it 720 rands. At least that will make a difference, compared to that 480. But we also contribute during disasters, as the country now has been hit by disasters. Year in and year out, even Eastern Cape were not immune. SASSA has got a role in assisting during disasters to help people who are in crisis. We contribute in various ways. One of those is when people are displaced and placed in a particular hall or institution, we provide mattresses, we provide hot meals, vanity packs. We include, the vanity packs are categorized. There are some for adults, there are some for women, there are some for children. So the one for children will include, for instance, formula, will include nappies, all the things that are required for the child. Because if you are in a hall, you lost everything. So other than food, you'll need then that kind of support and assistance, which we do on an ongoing basis. But also when they've been moved out of that facility or a hall, taken back to their homes if they are repaired, we also followed up by providing them cash vouchers or cash for them to get to buy some groceries. But also if there are children who have lost school uniforms, whether it's floods or fire, we also assist by providing a school uniform for those children to be able to go back to work. I would want to dwell on this one because I've listened to a number of people who are here making presentations, even the Department of Education. On numerous occasions, they've indicated that if we can have an integrated approach in fighting poverty, we can make a huge difference. I agree fully with that. If you look at the amount of money that SASSA Eastern Cape disperses in the province, it's depicted in column 3, the economic investment. SASSA Eastern Cape disperses 2.6 billion per month, not per year. So one would ask yourself, where does this money go? Because we're able to split it into districts and local municipalities. You'll find that a small town like Matatiele, they were dispersing 60 million per month. But if you look around, you don't see that that community is receiving that kind of support. Without partnership and integrated approach, as I've indicated, we may not make the impact we're intending to make. We hope then the initiatives that are taken now will assist in that regard. But in total, as SASSA in Eastern Cape, the first column talked to the number of beneficiaries that are on the system or on the safety net. It's 1.9 million. But out of that, more than 1 million are children. So the majority of the grants that we pay are for children. So 1.9 beneficiaries are for adults, but adults that are receiving grants for children are 1.8, including the foster care and the care dependence grant. If you look, the next column is only number of children. There are 2 million children that are benefiting from social assistance program. Children alone, the first column talks to adults. As I've indicated, with that 2.6 billion that is dispersed every month. But if you count only the grants, then the last column, the total number of grants that we pay is 2.8 million grants per month. 70% of those are children. There's been a number of incidents where we identify that through reports from the media that in a particular village there are children that are not having IDs, that are not having birth certificates, they are not benefiting. I want to state it clearly that as SASSA, we have amended legislations in such a way that children can get a grant without a birth certificate. Adults can get a grant without an ID. But you find that this message is not getting across. So to us, when we talk of access to social assistance, it doesn't start by people applying for a grant, but it starts with awareness. So if people are not aware of their rights, if people do not know this favorable legislation on their side, they may end up not getting the access. We always appeal in every platform that we have that we'll share this information, we'll engage communities, we'll try and explain and market our services as much as possible, but doing that alone is not that easy. We also receive a lot of referrals from various sectors, including traditional leaders or chiefs or whoever, is providing leadership in communities, that there are certain excluded households or families, because as SASSA, one of the responsibilities that we have is to make sure that we avoid both the inclusion errors and exclusion errors. Inclusion errors talk to us paying people who are not deserving grants. I'm sure we've been on the media and many times SRD thrifty collected by public servants, people who are having income. So those are challenges that we're dealing with to make sure that is integrated in our data. But at the same time, there are people who are still excluded who are supposed to be part of the system. So we're trying to strike that balance through improving our own systems. But I want to emphasize that we're not having access to grants without documents from Home Affairs. Home Affairs is our critical partner. Where we want to extend access, we always engage them. We've got working relationship with them on an ongoing basis. We do have community engagements for them to come to assist with provision of grants, of the critical documents that are required for a grant. We also provide grants immediately. At some stage, we even collaborate with the Department of Health, where we will have arrangements with health that would want to catch children as they are born, because we identify that the category of 0 to 1 is excluded, or there are exclusion in that category. Children will come after 1 year old, once they've been living in poverty, and you ask yourself, why were they not coming in 1 month, 2 months? But if you get that information from health, Home Affairs assist in providing birth certificates immediately, then we come in and provide the assistance of grants. We get that information from clinics, but also in hospital. But that integration is not what we want us to see. It has not made that impact that much. But I'm happy then that the Department of Social Development is resuscitating the structures that are dealing with poverty elevation through the clusters. So we're participating, there's different departments, because you find that there are so many poverty elevation programs by Department of Agriculture, Social Development, NGOs, but integration is still lacking to complement what SASSA is doing. If we can succeed in that regard, I think we can make a bigger and a better impact. I'm happy that government also has come up with an approach that is called district development model, where we talk of vertical and horizontal collaboration, that the 3 spheres of government must work together. You know, if you identify, for instance, poverty pockets in the region, Eastern Cape has got many. I think the highest number of poorest municipality in the country are in Eastern Cape, Alfredo and OR Tambo district. If I make an example, for instance, Port St. John's has been listed amongst the top 3 poor municipalities in 2001, 2011, 2016. And then one is asking a question, if we knew this in 2001, what interventions did we make? But if these collaborations then are made, I think will make a huge difference. In terms of our plans for the year, we intend then to, on the numbers that I've already showed, to increase the number of new applicants by 167,431. But also on the grants that are already in payment, to increase them to 2.8 million. The target group of 0 to 1, where we have identified exclusions, we would want to eliminate 65% of that backlog, which translates to 78,697. But the extended CSG, which is new, it's a new intake. You are getting there, but it's a bit slow, whether people understand or not, but we are working with stakeholders to market it as much as possible. We intend at least to make a target of 28,709. But it doesn't mean when we get there, we'll stop. We'll go as much as possible. But you know, when you commit in plans, you need to put measurable targets. You can't just put estimations. I think largely that's what I can say around SASSA, the impact that we're making. But I would emphasize again, with better collaboration, we can make a huge difference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Mpeta. Commissioner Sibanyoni.
Thank you very much for also hitting that one very strong, the integration, which is very, very crucial. And I want to ask 2 questions. The first one is, you were saying that people can get the grant without ID or without birth certificate. How do we then prevent people who should not get the grant? I'm being careful of saying people who who are from other countries, not South African citizens. And then, secondly, I want to find out when a person applies to SASSA, the person is required to, you will correct me if I'm wrong, because this is what we pick up from the people. Submit your copy of your ID, submit your account number. Now, if SASSA looks at my bank account and my uncle was giving me, some money, how are you going to know that it's not an income, but it was just a donation, either members of my family? I'm regarding myself as an applicant, member of my family, were trying to assist me so as to achieve the right to food and to fight malnutrition. Those are the two questions.
Must I respond now? Oh, okay. Thank you, Commissioner. Yes, that's correct. We do provide grants to people who do not have IDs and children who don't have birth certificate. But it doesn't mean we don't ask any questions because we have to process an application. The procedure is just give us proof that you have attempted to go to Home Affairs, because there's a receipt or a paper that confirms that your application is being considered. If we didn't do that, we'll have to wait. In the past, we used to wait until Home Affairs produces the ID, whether it takes 3 months or 4 months. So we're avoiding that. So you have to come up with something to show that you have made an attempt, and for the child, you make affidavit, and we grant that for a period of 3 months. So it's not permanent. Then after 3 months, and if you have not come forward, because by that time we estimate that then your ID, your birth certificate should have been provided. Home Affairs is a bit faster now. But if still after 3 months you give us evidence that your problem is Home Affairs, it's not you, we extend. So people don't just come and then they are given the grant. There is some verification and engagement, especially in villages. We work with the local leaders. They facilitate and ensure that when we intervene in such situation, we always come with Home Affairs, so that people are not directed to walk or travel to Home Affairs. If we go with Home Affairs, they can give us something that confirms that we have taken the application. Then, regardless of the period that it takes, in the meantime, the child will benefit. That's why then we'll pick up whether you are a legal citizen or not a legal citizen, because there will be something that confirms from Home Affairs. The next question is a bit tricky. I know it's also in court. Some institutions took us to court that if we identify that there is money in your account, we don't proceed to pay the grant, but it applies to the SRD 350 grant. The other grants, it's a normal means test where you make a declaration that I'm working, I'm not working, you confirm with a bank statement, and then we verify with a normal verification process. But with SRD 350, I think we've been exposed that so many people got into the system when they don't qualify. Public servants, prisoners. Remember, I mentioned, because if you're a prisoner, you're not supposed to get a grant. You're in a state institution, you're given food by the state and everything by the state. Our systems have been improved and tweaked in such a way that we avoid these inclusion errors. But then the rule is, SRD 350 is for somebody who does not have anything. So our means test then is to establish that, because we are means tested every month. If then you get money from your brother or sister this month, when we means test, you are not paid, because we're saying if the amount is above 350, at least you've got something than a person who's got a zero balance in the account. I know, as I'm saying, this matter is in court. We're still negotiating. There is a consideration by the department that we may move the threshold from 350 to 640, which is in line with the lower bound poverty line. But we have to verify, because there are people who are getting salaries every month or some other form of income. So if we remove that, we will open floodgates and everybody, even those who do not qualify, will be benefiting. So it's a control measure. Because if we stop it now for this month, because we found there's a particular amount, we'll test it again next month. If there's no money, your grant will continue. So it's just a safety measure to avoid inclusion errors. Because Treasury, for instance, they hit us very hard. Because we get the budget from them, they give us a list of people who are not qualifying and quantify that into millions. It's very difficult then to justify. But we are trying our level best to find each other. How best can we prevent the inclusion errors? Because if you pay people with salaries when there are millions of people who are not getting anything, it also becomes a problem.
Thanks. Commissioner Makwetla?
Thank you. Can you collaborate with Department of Health? Can you give us some indication on how you do that?
Yes, we do collaborate with the Department of Health. Of course, there's two grants. The other one is adults grant, disability grant. We don't have doctors as SASA, we depend on them, but also there's care dependency grant, children with disability. Doctors are provided by health. We do hire doctors on contract. Apologies. We do hire doctors on contract, but the custodian for doctors is the Department of Health. So we've got that collaboration around then getting the expertise in terms of doctors, where we follow a booking system. If you apply for a disability grant or care dependency grants, then you'll be booked. We facilitate a process where, in many instances, we prefer to process those applications in the facilities of the Department of Health. They assist us a great deal. And people who apply for a disability grant or care dependency grant, they've got a file. You can't have a disability without having a doctor who you consult from time to time. It's doctors from the Department of Health. So that information also assists even our doctors. If they want follow-up to understand or clarity, they consult health doctors. But also on the CSG, the 0 to 1 category that is excluded, most of the time children are born in clinics or hospitals. So we don't have that information as SASA. We just wait for people to come and apply for a grant, and we realize that the numbers are low. Then to be proactive, then we'll have arrangement, for instance, with a clinic, that for pregnant women who keep on coming, if people are pregnant, you consult the clinic on an ongoing basis. They've got that information. Convey the message that when you deliver, SASA is available, is accessible for you to benefit. Beyond the clinics, in terms of the hospital, where they deliver children, we come with Home Affairs. Sometimes we'll have an office where SASA and Home Affairs are sharing that space. As soon as we get information that children are born, Home Affairs will fast-track the process of issuing a birth certificate, and then SASA will fast-track the process of taking the application. That's the kind of collaboration that we have. Thank you very much, Commissioner.
Thank you, Ms. Mpeta. I think I'm just going to focus on one question. So we've seen a lot of stats coming through the past few days. Very valuable. So we need to address child hunger in the province. There's no two things about it. And one of the measures that have been proposed, and which is coming out as a potential clear intervention, is to address the 0 to 5-year-olds head on. The National Nutrition Program from Education does not cover them yet. They're not yet in the ECD sector, which has been transferred now to education to benefit from the nutritional program. You've indicated now even the 0 to 1 cohort is not even receiving the child support grant, but we'll get to that. I don't think you can, obviously you won't be able to commit or to have an official position, but I want to have a conversation on this. In the interim, and as a measure of immediate assistance to the 0 to 6-year-old cohort, why can't we then just increase the child support grant whilst we are discussing at a policy level the full increase of all children, you've indicated how many children? 1.9 million per, just in Eastern Cape. 1.9 million. 2 million just in the Eastern Cape who are receiving that grant. But can't we in the interim just focus on the 0 to 5-year-olds? Knowing that at policy level, we're going to discuss the full increase of the CSG as a long-term intervention. Knowing at policy level that the nutritional program will be expanded, potentially then to include the ECD sector, which will then fall under education. But we're sitting with this crisis now. And if we fail the children now, it leads to death. But it also leads to stunting, which will become a much larger issue in the longer term. So I know that regulation or Section 12A allows for an intervention of that to that extent. I just want to hear your thoughts on that, whether that's not an emergency measure we can undertake, knowing that at policy level and long term, we are looking at interventions. But those interventions are going to be potentially too late for those that are acutely affected now.
Oh, thank you very much. There are a number of intervention programs by the Department of Social Development, which I cannot present in detail. There is a discussion because if you note the current lower bound poverty line, our child support grant is below that. Yeah, so there is engagement and discussion with a number of the key stakeholders to consider increasing it. But I don't want to preempt and pronounce at the right time, the appropriate authorities are engaging. It is a fact, it is a challenge, it has to be addressed. We agree fully with the sentiments that you are expressing, but I won't be able to go in details. But that dialogue is continuing with the intention of doing exactly what we have raised.
Thank you, Ms. Mpeta. No, absolutely. But at the right time is now. At the right time cannot be in the long-term future. At the right time must be now. Because we have heard from DSD, but what we put to DSD from everything that has been presented before us is that the programs are in place. We're not taking away any of that. But stunting has not come down after several years of implementation of programs. So clearly those programs are there and may have contributed to stunting not being higher and malnutrition not being higher, but it's not going down. So we need intervention. We need immediate intervention, and we need people to start thinking outside of the box. I understand and I fully agree with you, you can't be pronouncing on policy here, but it's a conversation we need to start having in the public domain. It should be a conversation that does not end here, and it should be a call for action, not in 2 or 3 financial years, but a call for action for very soon. So that is the one comment. But the last one, just a quick footnote. I know we all always refer to it as a vanity pack. Please, can we just change that word? You should not be described as being vain for wanting to look after your most basic needs. So if we can rename that as a personal care package or something like that, surely our women are not vain in wanting sanitary pads when it comes to the time where they don't have anything to provide for themselves. So that's just a comment from my side. Commissioner, anything else from your side? Commissioner Makwetla, anything else from you? Would you like to respond as a... yes.
I want to just make a comment. Yeah, no, it's working. Now, I want to make a comment on the impact of all these intervention programs. Maybe we need to start this dialogue because I don't see it frequently, but it makes a huge difference. I was listening to the HOD for the Department of Education, Mr. Kwase. He was making reference to people who are receiving 350, where he was saying they'll get a 350, but it doesn't reach the village. There's a Shibin before you cross the bridge, so the SRD 350 doesn't cross the bridge, meaning that it doesn't serve the purpose. I must admit, there are complaints and concerns that there's a lot of abuse of the grants that we provide, children's grants, where a person will apply and will assess the person qualifies, but the grant is used for something else, and then children suffer. How I wish also that is also taken into consideration. As SASSA, we don't have that capacity to monitor. The moment you receive the money, what happens with it? But through collaborations with social workers, I think we can be able to monitor grants recipient, especially for children's grants, that all these grants that are received by caregivers, they end up benefiting the children. I agree fully that the amount is small and the time is now, but if people who are abusing the grants have got a lot of space in doing that, will pump in a lot of money, but you don't see the ultimate outcome. So I think that collaboration we're talking about, it should also focus on that area, because you don't see a lot of debate around that, but it happens. If you live in townships in these areas, you see the CSG beneficiaries. You know, on the payday, they are all over the places I don't want to mention in the commission, but yeah, I just wanted to close that comment. Your advice is noted. We meet as department, we engage. I've noted the issues that were raised. Thank you very much, Commissioner.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mpeta. I think that brings us to the end of your session, and we appreciate the presentation that you've provided to our office. So you are released with that being said. Thank you so much, sir. Tembi. We are making good time. So
The next presenter is supposed to be 2.
okay.
So
Is it online?
It's online. I could check if they're able to do it now.
Or even just sooner. If it's at 2, if we break now for it's 12:30 now. If we break until 1:30, 1:30 we can, if it's possible, and then we can conclude for the day. Thank you so much. Can we?